enjoying our fall festival this year and learning so much about QCT6. I'm Angelique and I'm excited to get to show you our QCT6 Gold and some of my favorite features. So what I'm going to show you today is some of the gold features that I'm using to quilt this A Star is Born quilt. And I'm also going to show you how I did some designing in QCT6 Pro so that I could really customize this quilt. So what is Gold? Well, Gold is basically a subscription that you add to your QCT6 Pro that gives you a bunch of new features such as advanced panto, borders and corners, corner maker, FontStitcher, multi-pattern placement, fabric compensation, pattern eclipse, and virtual long arm. You'll also get monthly additional designs that you can import and quilt to your desire. I'm going to show you first how easy it is to get those monthly designs. You're going to start by going to the help menu where that question mark is. And then on the right side, you'll see about, settings, etc. Click on the one that says download patterns, and any patterns that you haven't downloaded will be highlighted, but you basically click OK, click download, and you can download everything or just the ones that you want. They're fun, they're new, they're fresh, so be sure to check those out. What if you want to design your own patterns to quilt out? Well, all you need to do is access PatternCAD in your QCT6 Gold. So today I'm going to show you some of the features that I used in PatternCAD to create some of the designs that I'll be stitching out later today. But there is even more information on how to use PatternCAD if you go to our YouTube channel and check out our previous series on QCT6 Pro. To access PatternCAD on your home screen, you're going to click the PatternCAD button and it's going to launch that, and you'll see a graph here. And a couple of the features that I'm going to focus on, because if you've watched any of my stuff before, I've kind of said I'm not a great artist when it comes to drawing. So I'm going to do some tracing. So one of the features that I really like is loading in an image to the background. So you're just going to go to background, you're going to load your image. And I'm going to use this bump file of this crab. Now I did use some software to help me draw this out. And now I'm basically just going to use this so I can trace it. So I might start by just kind of enlarging it a little bit, but I want to be able to see what it is that I'm doing. So I can fade my background so that I will much easier be able to see what it is that I'm drawing. When you are going to use PatternCAD, you want to make sure that what you are creating is going to be a continuous line. If you do that, you're going to eliminate a lot of trim lines. If you don't, then you have to play with the optimization a little bit, trying to get there, or deal with the trim lines. So I'm going to click on the continuous lines. And because I have a lot of round shapes, I'm going to be using the spline and the arc to do my drawings. So I'm going to start with the arc. And for the first two, I definitely need to draw. And then once I've done that, I can highlight those two nodes, and that will give me access to the blue square so I can adjust my arc. If I switch to using the spline, then I have control over more than one section of this. So I can get different shapes. So like maybe I want that a little bit more pointed, or adjust just a section of it. I can just get closer to the shapes that I want. Once I have those two, all I have to do is just click the lines in the next places that I want to go and continue to adjust as desired. As soon as I'm ready to continue drawing, I will do that. If, like this point, I didn't quite get it where I wanted to, then the move feature, I can just move that one once I've selected it. I can choose to move them individually, or I can select them both and move them together when I'm on spline. When I'm on arc, I only get one of those nodes to adjust. So we're just going to continue to do this all the way around the design until we finish it up. So let me show you what it looks like when you're done. And basically this is what it will stitch out. We can take a quick look at it in Optimize so that you can see I was able to get this as one complete pattern. We can even watch it stitch out to get an idea of where it's going to go to complete those looks. And now I have my very own crab for the centerpiece. of my quilt. Now it's time to get into some of the gold features that I'll be using. The first one we're going to use is the FontStitcher. You'll find that underneath the gold access features, and you can just click on that. We're in simulation mode, so doesn't matter what my numbers are right now, so I'll just kind of get past that. But once you do, you'll get into your FontStitcher screen that you see here. Now, this font maker or FontStitcher is one of my favorites because it allows me to add that personalization to a quilt, such as names. In this case, I'll be using it for my sign, my astrology sign. And you do get a lot of ways to choose the fonts that are already in your system, or if you want new fonts, you just put those fonts into where Microsoft keeps fonts for things like Word and so on. So you can easily scroll through the different fonts that are here, but what if I want to see them all, or this is just a little time consuming? Then click on the name and it will bring up a whole bunch at one time. And then you can just kind of go through and look at them. One thing to keep in mind when you do decide to select a font is what it's going to be like to stitch. And then once I've selected that, I can type in my message. So right now I'll just type in hello, because I want to hello and welcome you to my segment. And this is basically what it's going to look like when it stitches out. So when we're happy with what we have written out in our message, we can hit OK. We can do things like underlines, and it will stitch an underline for you, or maybe you want to strike out a message and put something else in. You can bold it or italicize it. So we'll hit OK, and it's just going to prompt you to save your design. So put in a name, hit enter and save wherever you want to save that. So it automatically then takes you to the placement screen, but we're going to move on to the next feature that I want to show you. And now I'm going to show you another one of my favorites, and that is the multi-pattern placement. So let's get started with that one. I'm going to focus first on my centerpiece to kind of show you how I used some of the fonts and so on. And we're going to do that by accessing our select and sew. And like always, when you are working in QCT, you do need to set your safe zone. So we're going to do that. Okay, so right now I'm just going to pick one of my patterns, and I'm going to start with the name of my astrological sign, which is Cancer. And before I place this, I just want to make it a little bit smaller so it's not distracting me. And in the toolbox, you're going to find the marking tool. I love the marking tool because it allows me to perfectly see on the screen where my block is, the size of my block, and helps me place all of the pieces that I want to place on there. I'm also going to use this to stitch in the ditch. So I'm going to be very careful in how I draw this one. So I'm going to just kind of move this along a little bit at a time. If I just want the shape, I'll just go the 4 points of the square. But since I do know that my piecing's a little bit wonky, I'm going to be very precise. So we have finished drawing out our block, so we know how we want to place this. I'd really like my astrological name to be right up against the edge here, so I can plan that. And as long as I can see my green lines inside of my drawn box, then I know it's going to stitch within that box. And then I can kind of guesstimate where I want this to be here and come across on the other side. But I'm really just using the screen here where that line is to really see, does this look like it's matching up? Because I can kind of see, you know, do I look like I'm real rectangular? Is anything off a little bit? So now I'm going to go ahead and click on markings because I know for sure I want to draw that box. And then I'm going to click on the multi-pattern placement toggle. And I'm going to get this message that basically tells me I now have to use this. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to be adding patterns. So I'm going to click the button that says pattern. And it's going to ask me, would you like to place this pattern again? Now, if I want to place this exact pattern again, then I'm going to click yes. If I want to pick something else, I can still click yes and I can still access the select pattern, or I can click no. What you don't want to do is click the X. If you click the X, you didn't make a choice and it's going to double stitch. So the X just closes that window. It doesn't really tell the program what to do. So avoid clicking that X. So I'm going to say no, and I'm going to go up to the top of my screen and I'm going to select a pattern. And that crab that I made, I want that to be the center of my design. And I'm going to click open. And now I'm ready to place this portion of the pattern. Now you can draw on your quilt if you'd like. I'm just gonna, again, eyeball it because I have my box drawn out. So I can really just make this look the way that I want it to look. So you can see just those little nudges, I can really kind of stretch it out. And so, I mean, I can see like, oh no, that's off a little bit. All I gotta do is adjust my machine a little bit until I get the look that I want. I think I like the placement of it. It looks pretty even to me. So I wanna make sure I set it. I'm gonna click pattern again. I'm going to pick a new pattern, so I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna go back to my select pattern and I wrote out my dates. And I'm gonna place that below. So again, if I want it to completely touch the bottom, I can focus on the bottom portions of that first, and then just kind of come up until I like the placement. Now, even though I'm done, I need to lock that design into the QCT. So I'm gonna hit pattern one more time and say no, but this time I'm not gonna select anything. And now everything that I'm ready to stitch is ready to go. So I'm gonna click the quilt button and it's gonna take me to the quilting interface. And I like to do a quick optimize just to see if there's a better organization for how to quilt this out. So I am gonna have a lot of those trim lines as a result of the design that I chose. So to make some of this easier, I'm gonna go into settings and I'm gonna make sure that I have it selected to pause at trim lines. And so this is just gonna give me more control, and I like control. I have it on medium speed. I've set my tie off to what I like and my stitches per inch. So now it's simply pulling up the bobbin for the first time. And it's gonna wait for me to hit sew because I need that moment sometimes to double check and double think what my plan is. So you can see I've pulled up my bobbin. All I need to do now is hit sew. It's gonna move it back, and as it does that, I'm gonna just slowly pull on the bobbin thread, and it's just gonna start stitching my design. All right, so this next move is going to be a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. And to do that, I'm going to click the toolbox and I'm going to click release carriage so that I have manual control. I'm going to pull up my bobbin so I can fasten it off. And then I'm going to tell it to move to the next place that it wants to start. It will re-engage the carriage and the automation, move to the new start point, and then I'll go through the process of pulling up my bobbin again. I'm just going to bring up my final bobbin and cleaning up as I go. And there you have it. There is the completed center design from everything that we did from the FontStitcher and in PatternCAD to make our own design. So now I'm going to focus on these two blocks to continue using the multi-pattern placement. I am going to be changing my thread color for this section here. So I'm really just going to be working on this corner here and this one here. I've written out sort of the designs of where I want to put them. So I'm going to pick one of my constellations. So this one, I'm not going to be actually stitching around the whole thing. So I'm just going to start in the toolbox with the marking tool, and I'm just going to make the shape that's around the blue area. Right, so that's going to give me an idea of the area that I have to place my design. So I'm going to start up here in the corner and start sort of figuring out where I'd like this one to be, because I'm going to put a couple of constellations over here. I think I like that a lot. So I'm going to again continue with the multi-pattern placement, and I'm going to pick the other constellation that I want to put with this one, and we're going to place it as well. So this is one of the reasons I really like to draw out the shape of my block, because I can really play with how I want it to look. Because I've got sort of these odd shapes that I design based on the constellations. Some will have longer areas, some will be more compact, and so this allows me to kind of do that. I'm also going to add a couple of other elements to kind of fill in some of the areas that the constellation itself won't do. So I made myself a basic star. I think we'll try placing it about there. Maybe I want to rotate this one a little bit once I get it sort of where I want it. So I can go back to placements there, and I can just rotate it any direction that I want. There's another star that I really like, so I'm going to go grab that, this starburst one. So I'm going to select it, open that up, and I'm going to place this one over in this corner somewhere. All right, so I am going to go to the marking tools now, and I'm going to remove this selected marking tool because I want to now focus on what I'm going to put in this part of the block and in this part of the block. So we're going to make a new one, so I'm going to click Add Markings, and I'll just call it 1 as well, and then I can start adding those points. Because I'm moving so much, I'm going to add a second one since they are kind of separate triangles, and I'll just call it 2. You can call it whatever you want. I just wanted something quick and simple. All right, so now I have my spaces for continuing to add some patterns in. We're going to focus on this one here. So I am going to use some gold patterns that I downloaded for this one. I'm going to use this triangle one, and I'm going to place that in here. So I'm going to go back to placements, and since this is a triangle, I am going to select triangle. What I have is pretty much a right triangle, so that is the one that I want. So we're going to move this to the corner, and I'm going to set that point first. Then I'll move up towards the top here. I'll set that point to the bottom and set that point, and it looks like I'm pretty inside of that, and I'm going to add one of my glyphs, in this case the Leo, and I'm going to place this one in here. So I'm going to go back to 4 point for it and start placing this design where I would like it to go. I think a nice rotation on this one would be good. I can make it a little bit bigger now. So notice that because I have my area set, I can actually go off of that area so that I can get the shape that I want to really fit in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and hit pattern again. I'm going to say no. I'm going to go to my marking tools. I'm going to get rid of those markings. Okay, now I do want to stitch in the ditch along this line here so that on the back you're going to see a completed star when I'm done. So I'm going to add a new marking, and since I'm going to stitch this one, I'm going to be really careful when I'm adding the line to do it in several places. Once I've got that line and I want to do that marking, I'm going to click the marks button, and it's going to ask me would I like to close this marking. And I would say yes if, like, say I drew a shape like a box or something and I wanted those points to connect. But if I say yes to this one, it's going to take the end point that I just drew up here and connect it to the start point where I started and draw the line twice when I stitch it. So I'm going to say no because I don't want it to do that. Right? Now I'm ready to quilt. Like always, I optimize my thing, and you can see I only have one stitch line that I have to worry about, and I'll organize this, and then we can continue quilting the rest of the quilt the same way using all these features I showed you with the multi-pattern placement. Now that we've finished quilting the center part of our quilt with all of our blocks, we're ready to do the outside. And so now I'm going to show you how you can customize your border with our gold feature borders and corners. And you can access that in your gold features. Click on borders and corners, and then you're going to get this screen here. We're just going to go in order as you see in the window on the left lower side, starting with the border style and placement. And so we want to figure out what style border we have first. And what I have has cornerstones, so I'm going to select the one that says block. So now you can see that I have these little gray lines to represent the block areas of my border. After we switch it, because I am working on the bottom border, so I do need to switch from the top to the bottom, and then we can set properly by moving over to the edge, and we're going to do this bottom one first, and then we'll move over and we'll do the other edge bottom. Something that will kind of help is if you lock your verticals when you do this, this will actually keep it from doing those wonky things. Because those can kind of freak you out at first if you're like, my border doesn't look like that, but you're still setting up. So that's just gonna eliminate that for you. So then next, I'm gonna come back over to the left, and I'm going to do the outer up one, and then I can start doing my inside ones. So I'm going to do this corner here, so that's gonna set that one for me. And it doesn't really matter where the inner one totally is because I'm not going to be stitching over there until I move my quilt. So that now has adjusted to the actual width of my border. Next, we're going to set margins. Now, setting margins has to do with how you actually want it to lay in here. It defaults to both, but if you only want to set one margin, then if you click the lock button, now you can set either or both. And so I only really want to worry about this outer margin because I'm going to put binding on this, right? My binding is going to be about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to set it to 0.375. That's going to give me that little bit of extra space when I do the trimming and when I put the border so that my design will look complete. Next, I can get the pattern. So I'm going to start by selecting my corner pattern, and I have selected something in gold, and it's this star vine flower here. And so that's going to place those on both of the corners. I can also select a design for the center, and so I've decided to use that same one for the center. When I do that, it's going to warn me that it has the same name, just to be sure that I have in fact picked the one that I wanted. And so I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to select the filling of the rest of the border. And that's going to be these painless peels. So if you have it to autofill, it's going to best fill the space with what you have. Now your best patterns are going to be those that are already continuous, but you can use like block shapes as well if you don't mind cutting the trim lines. It just depends on what you want your borders to look like. So the next thing I can deal with is the orientation of my corners. So I can turn these if I would like, so I can flip them either direction, and it's going to show how it's lining up here. So I kind of like how this one is lining up along the bottom one. I can adjust spacing if I want to as well, but this is then going to move this from the corner, and I don't want that, so I'm going to leave that as is. I can do the same thing on the other side by moving it. So I can go into the flip patterns and do some more adjustments that I would like to do. I'm going to focus now on the main part of the border. So you'll see it set up for corner, and if you've selected a center one that's different, you'll have one for center and then you'll have one for the border. And so I want my heels to kind of flip-flop that extra line that's there. So I'm going to click on the every other on the vertical, and now you can see how that pattern has flipped itself a little bit. Edit pattern connections just gives you that little bit extra control. It will join patterns together automatically is what is selected there, and you can edit the gaps. Once I've done all of those things, I'm ready to go ahead and sew. Since I do want to change the color of thread that I'm using for my 2 squares, we're just going to focus on doing sew portion. So I'm going to click on the sew portion, and once you do that, you'll see that you have some choices. And I really want to do all of the center portion or the main part of my border. So I'm going to do the left, the middle, and the right border, and then I'm going to click sew. Once I'm in sew, I'm going to click optimize, and if I animate the stitching, it adds a little extra line that connects my pattern. So this is ready to go. And since I'm doing the major part of my border, I'm going to show you the next trick and another gold feature, which is located in plugins, and that is fabric compensation. Fabric compensation is a must, especially when you can see the way that my quilt is laid out. It's not straight across anymore, but yet I want my pattern to be straight across. So Pattern Comp's going to allow me to fix that and really tell it exactly how I want it to sew. So I want to focus on this border here. You can hit the next button and you're going to see it changed the dark green to the location that it's going to. And so once I get the dark green on that border, I'm ready to do the next step. I'm going to go about an inch or so from the edge where I did that placement for the corner, and I'm going to hit the add button that's here, and that's going to put a little dot. And I can do as many or as few of those as I want as I move along. And this is just going to help it line up to the way the shape of my border currently is. Okay, so I have basically fixed how it's going to place, and now I'm ready to sew. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go to the pull bobbin portion of my screen. All right, so I really want you to notice what Fabric Comp did for me. This was pretty crooked. So now you can see that it's done a really good job keeping the spacing and keeping it in that line, despite the fact that I'm actually running a little crooked. That is like just the coolest feature. Now that we've got the main part of the border, we're going to do the 2 cornerstones. So I'm going to again click on sew portion and click the left and right corner. Now, as you can see, I'm going to have a huge distance between the 2, so I'm going to go into those settings again and make sure I have pause trim lines on so that I don't have to waste so much thread to get to the other side. Now we'll take it to the other side so we can complete the bottom cornerstone here. So while this is finishing up, just another hint and tip about doing your borders. When it's time to do the side borders, one of the easiest things that you can do is take it off the frame, turn it, and then re-put it so that your border is now at the top and you're only going to do the inside portion and your design will be done. If you'd like some of the glyphs and the constellations that we did for the astrology quilt, check the comments so that you can get your free download. And stick around if you have any more questions about QCT6 Pro or QCT6 Gold and the features that I showed you today. Ask our presenters. Thanks for joining us.